When I got married, I told my husband that our family had a curse: if a married man cheated, he would get cancer and die within 6 months. My husband thought I was joking and didn't take it seriously. Later, when I caught him getting too close to a new intern at his company, I reminded him again. To my surprise, he got furious, accusing me of deliberately cursing him. Heartbroken, I asked for a divorce. But fearing I'd take his assets, he tampered with my car, ensuring I'd die in a crash. In this second life, I no longer remind my husband, nor do I mention divorce. I simply watch as he slowly walks toward his own ruin, then inherit all his wealth. Jessica, can you stop jumping to conclusions? You know perfectly well that Ivy is Lucas's sister. I've been extra nice to her out of respect for Lucas. There's absolutely nothing going on between us. My husband's impatient voice snapped me back to reality. And then, I realized, I had been reborn. Reborn to the exact day I first noticed my husband's suspicious closeness with the new intern at his company. Last time, after discovering my husband's questionable relationship with the intern, I had reminded him again about our family's curse. Honey, I told you when we got married, there's a curse in our family. Any married man who cheats will get cancer and die within 6 months. Not only did he refuse to believe me, he accused me of cursing him. Jessica, do you think this nonsense is funny? Even if such ridiculous superstitions were real, which they aren't, what does it have to do with me when I haven't cheated? You can't keep hexing me just because you're paranoid about me straying. I can't talk to you when you're like this. Go think about what you're saying. That time, we parted on bad terms. My husband hadn't cheated yet back then, but if there hadn't already been signs of it, why would I have bothered warning him? My husband and I got together in college. After 5 years of dating, we got married, and now, 2 years into our marriage, our relationship had always been quite good. So my feelings for him ran deep. Even now, knowing my husband has strayed, I don't want to divorce easily. As long as he comes back to me, we can still live happily together. So to protect my marriage, from then on, I started visiting my husband's company frequently. Though at first, my husband seemed displeased, gradually his attitude toward me improved, returning to how it was during the best times of our relationship. I thought I had managed to preserve my marriage and chose to trust him. Until one day, I saw my husband coming out of a restaurant with Ivy on the street, then going back to her place together, and staying inside for a long time without coming out. Only then did I realize that the marriage I believed I had preserved was nothing but an illusion my husband had created for me. I called him and asked where he was. He lied, saying, just having a casual drink with a client. I'll be back soon. My heart felt as if it had been slashed by a knife, and the pain was unbearable. But I didn't lose my temper, I just smiled bitterly and said, really? Because I saw you entering Ivy's residential complex. Hearing this, my husband's first reaction wasn't guilt but furious questioning. Jessica, you actually followed me? I took a deep breath and said, I didn't follow you. I just happened to see it. With that, I hung up the phone and went straight home. Not long after, my husband returned as well. I said calmly, remember when I told you about the curse on our family? It's real. Before I could finish, my husband cut me off, his voice filled with anger. Jessica, will you ever stop? I already told you there's nothing between me and Ivy. She just had too much to drink at a business dinner, and no one came to pick her up, so I took her home. Can't you stop being so paranoid, always suspecting everything? And now you're threatening me with some curse. Seeing my husband's stubborn refusal to admit the truth, I stared straight into his eyes and asked, Henry, if you and she were truly innocent, why didn't you come out immediately after dropping her off? You only came back after I called you. Hearing my words, Henry's expression clearly showed guilt before he defensively retorted, you're being completely unreasonable. She invited me in for coffee to thank me, what's wrong with that? I saw the guilt in Henry's eyes as clear as day. With a cold laugh, my heart completely turned to ice as I calmly proposed divorce. Henry, let's get divorced. I did love Henry, but I couldn't accept a cheating man. Though I didn't know whether Henry and Ivy had already crossed that line physically, at this point, would it even matter? By asking for divorce now, I was actually doing him a favor. Henry froze, clearly not expecting me to bring up divorce. He laughed angrily. Jessica, are you trying to threaten me with divorce? Don't think I'll be scared just because you mentioned divorce. If you want a divorce, fine, but you leave with nothing. You won't get a single cent of my assets. Leave with nothing? Of course I wouldn't agree. Leaving with nothing is out of the question. What's rightfully mine, you can't withhold a single penny. The company may be yours, but don't forget, when it was in crisis, I invested money and put in a lot of effort too. Henry came from a single-parent family. His mother had passed away years ago, and his father never remarried. A year ago, his father also died from a brain hemorrhage. With many affairs left unsettled and unresolved, the company fell into crisis, leaving Henry, who had just taken over, completely overwhelmed and frantic. It was me who took out the $2 million my father gave me and invested it in the company. I also helped secure several partnerships, which ultimately revived the business and set it on a path to success. That day, we failed to reach an agreement and parted on bad terms once again. But I hadn't given up on divorcing Henry, so I began gathering evidence of his infidelity. Not long after, the brakes of my car suddenly failed, sending me crashing off the overpass. The car was destroyed, and I died. After my death, my soul didn't immediately dissipate but instead returned to Henry's side. That's when I discovered he had tampered with my car, all to prevent me from divorcing him and taking his assets. Henry and Ivy had been carrying on behind my back for quite some time. But before I could witness him succumb to cancer, I was reborn. Still, rebirth was a blessing. In this life, I wouldn't remind my husband about the curse, nor would I bring up divorce again. I would simply watch as he slowly marched toward his demise, and then inherit everything he left behind. I took a deep breath, suppressing the hatred in my heart, and softened my tone, saying something different from my past life. All right, don't be angry anymore. I didn't know Ivy was your best friend's sister before. I only asked because I saw how much you cared for her. Now that I know, of course I won't think anything of it. Seeing me say this, Henry's expression softened as well. As long as you don't overthink it. After so many years together, you should know exactly how I feel about you, don't you? I couldn't help feeling nauseated inside. Having experienced being murdered by Henry in my past life, how could I not be clear about his so-called feelings for me? Although he doesn't have such thoughts now, since it happened in the past life, it's only a matter of time in this one. I stopped paying attention to the ambiguous relationship between Henry and Ivy, allowing it to develop rapidly. And indeed, under my indifference, their relationship progressed even faster than in the previous life. Henry would use business dinners as an excuse to have meals with Ivy. Henry would gift her expensive jewelry and designer bags on her birthday. During business trips, he would bring Ivy along, and the two would even share a hotel room. Though I stopped interfering with Henry and Ivy's romantic developments, I hired a private investigator to monitor their situation. Besides uncovering details about Henry and Ivy, the detective also discovered the hidden relationship between Ivy and her brother. It's true that Ivy is the sister of Henry's close friend Lucas, but they share no blood relation. She's the daughter brought in by Lucas's stepmother. Moreover, the two have an inappropriate relationship. The private investigator captured photos of Lucas entering Ivy's apartment multiple times, only leaving the next morning. They also obtained pictures of the two passionately kissing in a car in the underground parking lot. In fact, Lucas was fully aware of the relationship between Ivy and Henry. It could even be said that Lucas deliberately placed Ivy by Henry's side. Clearly, the siblings had ulterior motives toward Henry, or more precisely, toward Henry's company. If it were just about Henry, that would be one thing, but if they had their eyes on Henry's company, they could forget about it. Henry's company could only be mine. Henry's company was a design firm. I held the nominal position of designer there but rarely went to the office, only participating in projects when necessary. But since I would eventually take over Henry's company, it was only natural to start familiarizing myself with it now. So I began appearing at Henry's office more frequently. My frequent presence made Henry think I had discovered his affair with Ivy. He felt both guilty and displeased. Even though his relationship with Ivy was now truly improper, he couldn't tolerate my suspicions. It made him feel insulted. "You've been running to the company all the time lately. Could it be you still suspect something between me and Ivy?" Henry put on an angry expression, as if offended by my suspicion, and questioned me. I pretended to be taken aback, then explained, "What are you talking about? If I said I trust you, then I trust you. I've just been working on a promising project recently and wanted to give it a try." To keep Henry from seeing through my intentions, I really had been negotiating a decent design project. Hearing it was just work-related, Henry didn't press further. After all, he was more than happy for me to bring in business and make money for his company. But Ivy's gaze toward me was always filled with resentment. Though her relationship with Henry was progressing well, Ivy's status remained nothing more than a secret mistress, so naturally, she looked at me with envy and jealousy. So whenever she got the chance, she deliberately made trouble for me. That day, when I went to the pantry to get water, I happened to run into Ivy. Ivy and I weren't exactly strangers. We had met a few times before when I accompanied Henry to dinners with Lucas, but we weren't close either. Ivy was very pretty, with the delicate, innocent look of a pure little flower, the kind that most appealed to men's protective instincts. No wonder even Henry, who had such high standards, had fallen for her. But women like her were never good people to begin with. Otherwise, she wouldn't have become Henry's mistress. Ivy pretended not to see me and deliberately bumped into me, spilling coffee all over me. Then, as if startled, she immediately bowed and apologized profusely. "I'm so sorry, sister-in-law. I didn't mean to." With that terrified, pitiful look of hers, anyone who didn't know better would think I had bullied her. But how could I not see through Ivy's scheming? So despite feeling angry inside, I managed to give a generous smile on the surface and casually said, "It's all right, I know it was an accident. I don't blame you. I'll just go change my clothes." Hearing this, Ivy didn't know how to respond. She had intended to provoke me into losing my temper so Henry would dislike me, but she never expected that I wouldn't blame her at all. "What's going on?" Henry came out upon hearing the commotion. Ivy's innocent eyes instantly welled up with tears. Just as she was about to say something, I spoke first. "It's nothing. Miss Lynn accidentally bumped into me and spilled coffee on me. She apologized, and I told her it's fine and not to blame herself." Since many colleagues around were watching, Ivy couldn't possibly deny it. "Be more careful next time," Henry said sternly to Ivy. In front of me, Henry naturally wouldn't openly defend Ivy to avoid arousing my suspicions. After all, Ivy was just a plaything to him. As long as I didn't threaten Henry's interests, he wouldn't turn against me for another woman. "Yes, Mr. Henry," Ivy replied, though she felt extremely hurt that Henry didn't stand up for her. But in the afternoon, Henry made an excuse about having a business dinner and wouldn't be coming home to eat, then went off to spend time with his little lover. So when I left work and ran into Ivy, she gave me a look full of smugness and provocation. After all, she's just a fresh-out-of-college girl, where would she know how to hide so many emotions? But to let their relationship develop smoothly, I naturally pretended not to notice anything. Anyway, since Henry had already effectively cheated, getting cancer would only be a matter of a month or two. Sure enough, before long, Henry started feeling discomfort in his stomach, loss of appetite, indigestion. Of course, I wouldn't suggest he go to the hospital for a checkup. Instead, I indirectly made all sorts of stomach-nourishing foods for him to ease his discomfort, making sure he wouldn't even notice his stomach was failing. Even if Henry had discovered it early and sought treatment, it wouldn't have been cured, because this wasn't ordinary cancer, it was cursed cancer. Once it appeared, there was no possibility of recovery. Moreover, it would claim his life within 6 months. The reason I didn't let him discover it early was simply to deny him any chance to prepare. Although Ivy knew her relationship with Henry couldn't be revealed to me, she couldn't resist flaunting her presence in front of me. At noon, as I was leaving the company, I saw Henry and Ivy returning from outside in the parking lot. Suddenly, Ivy let out an "oh no," and stumbled into Henry's arms. Instinctively, he caught her, but upon seeing me, he quickly pushed her away. Ivy, as if terrified I might misunderstand, hastily explained to me in a panic, "Sister-in-law, please don't misunderstand. There's nothing between Mr. Henry and me. I just twisted my ankle, and Mr. Henry only caught me to help." She said not to misunderstand, but deep down she wanted me to misunderstand, throw a tantrum, and make Henry dislike me. I smiled faintly and said, "What are you talking about?" As if I were such a jealous person. "I saw it, you accidentally twisted your ankle, and Mr. Henry caught you. If he hadn't, I would have thought him lacking in manners." Seeing that I wasn't provoked, Ivy looked disappointed. But when she realized I hadn't noticed their betrayal, she started mocking me for being foolish. Still, I didn't care. Relieved that I hadn't misunderstood, Henry explained to me, "I was out running an errand earlier and happened to run into Ivy, so I gave her a ride back to the company." "Yeah," I responded with a smile, pretending to believe him. Although Henry had always maintained a proper distance from Ivy at the company, ensuring no one noticed anything amiss, Ivy was determined to provoke me and repeatedly acted overly familiar with him on purpose. This led the employees to notice something unusual, and rumors about Ivy and Henry's relationship began to circulate. Later, when Ivy saw me, she started tearfully explaining, "Sis-in-law, there have been rumors lately about an inappropriate relationship between me and Mr. Henry. Please don't believe them, there's really nothing between us. Mr. Henry only treats me kindly out of respect for my brother. If it bothers you, I'll go talk to Mr. Henry and leave the company." I reassured her, "Ivy, don't overthink it. I know Henry treats you well because of your brother. Don't worry, I'll talk to Henry and ask him to rein in the employees to stop the speculation and protect your reputation." Ivy immediately wore a constipated expression, feeling somewhat frantic inside. She couldn't understand why I trusted Henry so much and wasn't the least bit angry. I actually don't think it's a big deal. I was just worried you might misunderstand," Ivy said with an understanding tone. Of course she wouldn't think it's a big deal, otherwise she wouldn't have deliberately created situations that would make people misunderstand. She just wanted me to believe it. Later, I found Henry and brought up how people in the company were misunderstanding his relationship with Ivy. "Henry, I believe you and Ivy are innocent, but those who don't know the truth might speculate because of how close you two are. This isn't good for either of your reputations, and you'll have a hard time explaining it to Lucas later. So you should be more careful." When Henry heard me mention that people at the company were gossiping about his unclear relationship with Ivy, he felt guilty. It was only when I said I believed him that he finally relaxed. As for the rumors about him and Ivy circulating in the company, Henry didn't suspect Ivy at all. He simply thought they might have gotten too close, leading others to misunderstand. From then on, he would have to be more careful. Henry took my hand, putting on a grateful expression for my trust. "Jessica, thank you for believing in me. I'll definitely be more careful from now on. It's mainly because Lucas wanted Ivy to learn a few things from me, so I kept calling her over to teach her. Though his touch disgusted me, I endured it to avoid raising his suspicions. After all, he would soon be a dead man." The next afternoon, Lucas came to Henry's company and said in front of everyone, "Henry, my sister is interning here, hope she hasn't caused you any trouble. If she does anything wrong, don't hesitate to scold her. Don't feel awkward just because of me." The employees immediately realized they had misunderstood the relationship between Ivy and Henry. So their boss treated Ivy differently because she was his friend's sister. After that, the rumors died down. This was all an act orchestrated by Henry. What he didn't know was that Lucas was already aware of his relationship with Ivy. Henry, feeling guilty for hiding it from Lucas, had been extra accommodating whenever Lucas asked for favors lately, though none were major, so Henry didn't think much of it. "Ivy is very diligent, no trouble at all," Henry replied. "That's good to hear." Lucas looked relieved upon hearing this. "By the way, I came here because I need your help with something. If you're free at noon, let's have lunch together." "Sure. I'm free," Henry agreed. The group went to a restaurant near the company for lunch. Lucas looked conflicted, hesitating to speak. Seeing this, Henry said directly, "Lucas, just tell me what's on your mind. With our relationship, there's no need to feel embarrassed, right?" Hearing this, Lucas sighed first, speaking with full resignation. "Henry, I've asked for your help several times recently. To be honest, I really feel awkward bringing this up now, but besides you, I don't know who else to turn to. Here's the thing, I've recently come across a promising project but I'm a bit short on investment funds. So, I'm swallowing my pride to ask if you could lend me some. I'll pay you back as soon as the funds come through." "How much do you need?" Henry asked. 1 million, Lucas said. "Sure, I'll transfer it to you later." Although Henry's company wasn't a major enterprise, 1 million wasn't a particularly large sum for him, so he agreed readily. Seeing Henry agree, Lucas breathed a sigh of relief and immediately assured him, "Henry, thank you so much. Don't worry, I'll pay you back as soon as possible." Having long suspected that Lucas and Ivy had ulterior motives for getting close to Henry, I wasn't particularly surprised when the private detective sent me the recording of their conversation. In the afternoon, Henry didn't come to the office and instead went to Ivy's apartment. I pretended not to know anything, letting them carry on. Grateful that Henry had lent money to Lucas, Ivy lured him back to her place, where they indulged in passionate intimacy, thoroughly enjoying themselves. That evening, Henry returned home exhausted. At first, whenever he came back after fooling around with Ivy, he would feel guilty and bring me all sorts of gifts. Over time, he gradually lost any sense of guilt. It was my trust in him that emboldened him. What he didn't know was that I was waiting for him to die. By the time Henry realized something might be wrong with his stomach, it was already too late. So I didn't bother hiding the truth and took him straight to the hospital for tests. The results came back, late-stage stomach cancer. Henry was thunderstruck. How could he have stomach cancer? He had completely dismissed what I'd told him when we got married, that our family carried a curse. If a married man cheated, he would get cancer and die within 6 months. So at this moment, Henry didn't connect the two things at all. He might have even forgotten I'd ever said those words. Yes, Henry had forgotten. Even if he did remember, he probably dismissed it as mere coincidence. After all, the so-called curse was too absurd, something straight out of superstition. When my parents first told me about this, I also thought it was complete nonsense. But my grandfather and my uncle both died of cancer after having affairs, one from liver cancer, the other from pancreatic cancer. My dad believed it from the start. After marrying my mom, their relationship remained strong, and he never once considered cheating. Because the curse isn't entirely without a solution, you just have to divorce before having an affair. Don't lose heart, honey. We'll cooperate fully with the treatment, I comforted Henry, though inwardly I was sneering. Generally speaking, late-stage stomach cancer can be treated through chemotherapy, radiation therapy, or targeted drugs to kill cancer cells, inhibit their growth and spread, and thus control the progression of the disease. Yes, it can only be controlled, not cured. And even with active treatment, at best, it can only extend life by a few years. Death is still inevitable. But Henry's stomach cancer is different from the usual kind, it's cursed. No matter how actively he treats it, he won't recover. So, of course, I fully support his treatment. After all, it's just a month or 2, and it won't cost much. What's the point of active treatment? It only buys a few more years anyway. Henry lashed out at me, but I didn't care at all. In the end, though Henry struggled to accept his stomach cancer diagnosis, he was terrified of death. Even if it meant just a few more years, he obediently underwent chemotherapy. His mood, however, remained terrible. He didn't just vent at me, but even doctors and nurses weren't spared. Since Henry started chemotherapy, he naturally couldn't manage the company anymore, so control of the company fell into my hands. I held a meeting with all department managers, explained that Henry had late-stage stomach cancer, and announced that all company affairs would be under my management from then on. Because this company was solely owned by Henry's family with no other shareholders, taking control was easy without any obstacles. Moreover, with Henry already in the late stages of stomach cancer, even with aggressive treatment, he could only live a few more years at most. The company would ultimately fall into my hands anyway. The first thing I did after taking control of the company was to fire Ivy. Ivy didn't know about Henry's late-stage stomach cancer, so after being fired, she immediately tried to contact Henry. But Henry was currently suffering from his illness. How could he possibly care about Ivy now? So Ivy couldn't even get in touch with him. Furious, Ivy came to confront me directly about her relationship with Henry. Jessica, I'll be honest with you. Henry and I have been together privately, so you can't fire me. Huh. I merely let out a cold laugh, not showing the slightest anger. Of course I knew long ago that you and Henry were already involved. All those tricks you used on me, I saw them clearly, I just pretended not to know. I even know that you and Lucas aren't actually siblings, and that you have an improper relationship. And your approach to Henry was deliberately arranged by Lucas, with the obvious goal of making Henry the fool. You. Ivy's eyes widened in shock, filled with disbelief that I could possibly know these things. A wave of fear spread from the depths of her heart. If I knew, did that mean Henry also knew, which was why he wasn't answering her calls? Though her approach to Henry had ulterior motives, she genuinely liked him and wanted to push me aside so she could take my place. You're talking nonsense, this is slander. Ivy hurriedly denied. But to me, it was nothing more than a desperate struggle. Whether I'm talking nonsense or slandering, you know the truth in your heart. If you don't want others to know, don't do it in the first place, I said with a faint smile. Also, there's something else you should know. Henry has been diagnosed with terminal stomach cancer. Even with aggressive treatment, he has at most a few years left. He no longer has the energy to deal with you. What? Shocked by this news, Ivy froze. Henry has terminal stomach cancer? I paid no further attention to Ivy, got up, and left for the hospital. At the same time, I sent the evidence I had gathered to Lucas's wife. Because of Henry and Lucas's close relationship, I had added Lucas's wife's contact information quite early on, though we rarely chatted. As for the matter between Lucas and Ivy, I never intended to hide it from Lucas's wife, it just wasn't the right time before. But now, the time had come. As soon as Lucas's wife saw the message I sent, she immediately called me. With photos as evidence, she didn't doubt me but simply asked how I had found out. I said, Henry cheated with Ivy. I discovered it while investigating their affair, so I sent you a copy. She thanked me. Let Ivy be dealt with by Lucas's wife. Now, it was time for me to tell Henry about this. In just a few days, Henry's face had grown noticeably haggard, not just from the torment of illness, but the psychological suffering was far worse. After all, the thought that even with active treatment, he could only prolong his life by a few years at most was agonizing. Ivy came to confront me today, saying you two have been together for a long time, I said calmly, without any emotional fluctuation. Henry was startled at first, then uneasy. He hated Ivy to death in his heart, hadn't he warned her not to blab to me? Why wouldn't she listen? Henry didn't deny it. Instead, he actively admitted his mistake and apologized, honey, I'm sorry. I couldn't resist temptation and made a mistake. Will you forgive me this once? I actually knew long ago, I replied with a faint smile, showing no signs of anger. After all, I'd already been angry, there was nothing left to be angry about now. Yes, there is only ongoing revenge. And Henry is about to pay the price for his actions, so I'm feeling very calm now. Upon hearing this, Henry widened his eyes in shock. What? You knew all along? I smiled faintly and said, because the first time I noticed your ambiguous relationship with Ivy, I knew you would cheat sooner or later. So, I hired a private investigator to look into you too. Hearing this, Henry immediately flew into a rage and shouted at me, what? You actually hired a private investigator to spy on me? So what if I cheated? How many wealthy men don't have women on the side? As long as I still come home and don't divorce you, that should be enough. With the truth exposed, Henry became more self-righteous. Instead of answering, I countered, guess what else I've uncovered? Without waiting for Henry to actually guess, I immediately pulled out the documents about Lucas and Ivy and handed them to Henry. The first page featured a photo of Lucas and Ivy locked in a passionate kiss, instantly capturing Henry's attention. Then, an even stronger surge of rage filled my chest. How could Lucas and Ivy do such a thing? What did Ivy take him for? Henry could betray me, but he couldn't stand Ivy betraying him, even if she was just his mistress. I twisted the knife deeper into Henry's heart. Lucas and Ivy aren't biological siblings. Ivy is the child his stepmother brought into the family, and they'd been involved in an improper relationship. In fact, Ivy was deliberately placed by Lucas to be by your side, just to make a fool out of you. No, this can't be true, this can't be. Henry couldn't accept it. His most trusted brother, the one he had always relied on, had conspired with his lover to betray him. Pfft. The shock was too much for Henry. Overwhelmed with rage, he spat out a mouthful of blood before collapsing into unconsciousness. I didn't leave, waiting for him to wake up again. However, when Henry came to, the way he looked at me had changed, first shock, then fury. Without hesitation, he lunged at me, as if he wanted to kill me. Fortunately, Henry was too weak at that moment and didn't even lay a finger on me. Jessica, why are you still alive? Didn't you already? Henry blurted out the question, but halfway through his words, he suddenly stopped, looking at me with wariness and confusion in his eyes. And the moment I heard Henry's words, I immediately guessed, Henry had also been reborn. But instead of panicking, I actually thought it was good that he had been reborn. Now he would clearly understand why I wanted revenge. Otherwise, if I told him but he couldn't remember, how dull would that be? Henry glared at me with venomous eyes, gritting his teeth as he demanded, "Does my stomach cancer have something to do with you?" Instead of answering, I countered, "Why do you ask?" "Because you said your family has a curse, married men can't cheat, or they'll get cancer and die within 6 months, Henry said through gritted teeth. I suddenly let out a light laugh and said with amusement, "Yes. I did say that, but you didn't believe me, so you cheated. Then why didn't you remind me in this life?" Henry roared at me. Yes, he had been reborn, but he felt no guilt whatsoever for killing me in his past life. Instead, he blamed me for not warning him again in this one. "Would you listen if I warned you?" "No, you wouldn't. You'd just accuse me of cursing you. Even when I asked for a divorce, you refused. Instead, to keep me from taking any assets, you tampered with my car's brakes, trying to kill me in a crash." I laughed mockingly, my gaze burning with hatred and murderous intent. Henry stiffened abruptly, shock flashing in his eyes. He hadn't expected me to know he was behind it. In our past life, he hadn't believed in that so-called curse, ignoring my repeated warnings, and still cheated. Until he actually got cancer. No treatment worked, and he died within 6 months. At first, he thought it was just coincidence. But then, when he opened his eyes again, still alive, with me unharmed, he found himself stricken with cancer once more. So he guessed I'd also been reborn. And this time, I never warned him about the curse. I even watched coldly as he cheated and fell ill. After 2 lifetimes of betrayal and cancer, he finally had no choice but to believe it was real. But he couldn't accept it. Why couldn't he have come back earlier? Then he would have divorced me before cheating. Suddenly, Henry looked at me eagerly, his tone pleading, "Jessica, since this is your family's curse, you must know how to break it, right? As long as you can resolve this, I promise to divorce you and give you half of our assets." As long as he could survive, he no longer cared about giving me half his wealth. I sneered coldly, leaving aside that this curse is unbreakable. Even if there were a solution, why would I help you? Do you think I'm magnanimous enough to overlook how you killed me in our past life? Besides, once you're dead, all your assets will be mine. Why would I divorce you and settle for just half? You. Henry was speechless with anger. You're fine now, aren't you? He refused to believe the curse was unbreakable, convinced I was deliberately refusing to save him. I retorted, just because I'm fine now doesn't erase all the harm done. Unless we get another lifetime to start over, in this life, you're destined to bear my revenge. It's good that you've been reborn, this way, you'll clearly understand why you ended up like this. Otherwise, my revenge wouldn't feel as satisfying. You. Henry glared at me with eyes wide in fury, practically wishing he could kill me. But at this moment, there was nothing he could do. Since Henry had been reborn, I stayed right there to keep an eye on him, making sure he couldn't try anything while I was away. Henry did attempt to seek help, but with me watching him, he had no chance at all. When the doctor arrived, Henry pleaded for help, claiming I was trying to harm him. The doctor didn't believe a word of it. After all, how could anyone cause something like stomach cancer? So he just assumed Henry was mentally unstable and gave him a sedative shot. For the next 2 days, Henry's cancer cells spread aggressively, leading to multiple organ failure. He no longer had the strength to cause any more trouble. Soon after, he died, consumed by pain and resentment. Since Henry had no parents or children, as his wife, I became the sole heir to his estate. With my vengeance fulfilled, I finally felt at peace. Lucas's wife told me she had filed for divorce. As for Lucas and Ivy's affair, she had exposed it to everyone, leaving both of them disgraced. Ivy and her mother were also kicked out of their home. After Henry's death, I finally told my parents about what had happened, though I left out the part about my rebirth, not wanting to worry them unnecessarily. When they learned of Henry's fate, they simply said he got what he deserved. Because of this curse, I never remarried. But I wanted children of my own. I didn't want to spend my life alone and miserable. So, I went to a sperm bank abroad and selected 2 high-quality donors. Fortunately, both children I gave birth to were boys, which means they won't be bound by the curse. Yes, in our family, the curse only affects women, not men. Though the curse punishes those who betray you, I still hope my children can marry and have families normally in the future.